This is 8-7, the quadratic formula and discriminant. So the first thing we're going to focus on is the quadratic formula, where a equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And this is in relation to trinomials that we've been focusing on, quadratic trinomials, quadratic degree of 2, trinomial 3 terms, where we have an ax squared, a bx, and a c. Okay, so example 1, 6x squared plus 5x minus 4. So I've written the quadratic formula up here for me to use. And I know from this particular quadratic formula that a is 6, b is 5, and c is negative 4. So I make myself a little chart. I just took that from the a is always in front of the x squared, the b is always in front of the x, and the c is always the constant, the number without a variable. And then I'm just plugging into this formula. So if I start with that, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, then negative b is going to be negative 5 plus or minus the square root of b squared is 5 squared, which is 25, minus 4 times a, which is 6, times c is negative 4. All over 2a, 2 times 6. Okay, I need to simplify, so I have negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 25, and then notice that this area, that's a negative 4, right? So in total, I have 2 negatives in this multiplication problem. So therefore, it's going to become a positive. And then I have 4 times 6, or 4 times 4, 16. 4 times 6 is 96. All over 2 times 6. So x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 121 all over 12. And so I need to write 2 math problems right now. I have negative 5 plus the square root of 121 over 12, and I have negative 5 minus the square root of 121 over 12. And I know that the square root of 121 is 11, so now I'm able to calculate these. Negative 5 plus 11 is 6 divided by 12, which is 1/2. And negative 5 minus 11 is negative 16 divided by 12, which simplifies to negative 4 over 3. So my solutions are negative 4 over 3 or 1/2. Let's do the same thing again. So I start with, well, this one I actually notice is not equal to 0. So I could move the x and the 20 to the other side, which means I'm going to have a negative x when I move that because I'm subtracting x. Okay, a discriminant is what is underneath the square root of a quadratic formula. So that would be b squared minus 4ac. And the discriminant tells us how many solutions. So it says find the number of solutions, not what are the solutions. The quadratic formula tells us what are the solutions. This tells me if there is one solution, two solutions, or no solutions. That's what it's telling me. So first I need it equal to 0. Then I take b squared minus 4ac. So remember, I'm setting up my little thing. A is 3, b is negative 2, c is 2. So I take b squared, negative 2 squared, minus 4 times a times c. Negative 2 squared is positive 4. And then here I get a negative because there's only one negative sign. And 4 times 3 is 12, times 2 is 24. So I have 4 minus 24, which is a negative number. Now remember, I'm supposed to be saying if I have 1, 2, or no solutions. So the way that you know that is if your answer results in a negative number, you would have no solutions. This makes sense because in a quadratic formula, this would be underneath the square root. The b squared minus 4ac would have been underneath the square root, and you wouldn't be able to take the square root of negative 20. It would give you no solutions. If you end up with a positive number, then you have two solutions. This is something that you have to memorize. If you end up with 0, then you have only one solution. So this needs to be memorized. And so my next problem, I start with A is 2, B is 11, C is 12. I'm going to use the discriminant to see how many solutions. So B squared is 11 squared is 121, minus 4 times A is 2, times C is 12. 121 minus 4 times 2 is 8, times 12 is 96. And so 121 minus 96 is 25. That's a positive number. So I have two solutions. I never actually wrote my answer to the other one, where I had the negative number, so it's no solutions. That's the actual answer to the question, how many solutions it has. Okay, and the last one, A is 1, B is 8, C is 16. So B squared is 8 squared minus 4 times A times C. Well, 8 squared is 64, and then this is one negative, so it's going to be negative 4 times 16, 64. 64 minus 64 is 0, so that's not the answer. If you calculate 0, then there is one solution. And I'll explain in class better why we have this as our result, and so it might make it easier and you don't have to just think about, oh my god, I have to memorize this. We'll also talk about example 4 in class.